Well guys, $70 is how much a PS5 game costs now. And half the time you finish the campaign in 12 hours, hit credits, and sit there wondering if you just paid $6 an hour to feel nothing. But great news, these 21 games don't have that problem. Every single one earned its price. You can spend hours enjoying it, and some might have a bad launch, or some of them needed updates to get better, but as of today, they all in great shape and ready for you. Most of these games are so good that you shouldn't even wait for sale. But not all of them for sure, just some. Anyways, let's get into it. 2 playable protagonists and 0 loading screens. It's a type of game while you buy a brand new console. And not only that, a map that stretches across Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens without a single fast travel interruption. This is really amazing when we imagine how slow the PS4 was. That's what Insomniac sells for $70, and somehow people still waited for a sale. The sequel does something most follow-ups don't. It actually justifies both characters. Peter's arc with the symbiote gets genuinely dark. Not Marvel dark, where everything works out by the third act. Dark in a way where you're playing as Venom tearing through people, and the game lets you sit in that discomfort. Miles gets his own storyline that runs parallel, and switching between them isn't a gimmick. Their skill trees play completely differently. But the real value is in how this thing moves. Web wings turn the city into a playground where you never touch the ground. The DualSense makes every web zip feel like it has weight. And the boss encounters, Kraven, Venom, Lizard, are set-piece heavy spectacles that feel like you're inside a $200 million movie, except you're controlling it. 30 hours for the story, 40 plus if you clear everything. At $70, that's less than $2 an hour for one of the best playing action games on PS5. Don't skip this one. And please don't skip to subscribe. It really matters a lot for me. Next game. This game had the worst launch in modern gaming. You remember? Game-breaking bugs, last-gen consoles running it at 15 FPS, Sony literally pulling it from the PlayStation Store. CD Projekt Red went from The Witcher 3 guys to a punchline overnight. Cyberpunk was dead. Except it wasn't. 2 years of patches, a complete overhaul of the police system, reworked AI, new skill trees, and then Phantom Liberty, a 30-hour spy thriller DLC that's better than most full games released that year. Idris Elba's in it. The story branches in ways the base game never attempted. There's a mission in a stadium that rewrites how you think about player choice. The Ultimate Edition bundles everything. Base game, plus Phantom Liberty, plus every patch and fix. You're getting the version CD Projekt always intended to ship. 80 to 100 hours of content in a city that finally feels alive. Gangs with territory, fixers with personality, side jobs with actual narrative weight. If you wrote this game off in 2020, the version that exists now is a completely different product. And at its current price, it's one of the best deals on the entire PS5 store. $25. That's what Supergiant charged for a game that won multiple Game of the Year awards, got nominated for a Hugo Award for its writing, and has more replayability than games that cost 3 times as much. Every run through the underworld feels different because the combinations of weapons, boons, and upgrades create builds you've never tried before. The Blade of Chaos with Ares blessings plays nothing like the Shield with Aphrodite buffs. And unlike most roguelikes where dying means starting over with nothing, Hades ties its entire story to dying. You learn something new about Zagreus, his family, and the gods every time you fail. Dying is the progression. But real talk, does any game on PS5 deliver more hours per dollar than this? I've put in over 100 hours and I paid $25. Do the math on that. The combat alone would justify the price. The fact that it also has one of the best stories in any RPG, told through a roguelike structure, is almost unfair to everything else on this list. And speaking of games where the value is almost impossible to believe, wait till we get to number 7. 200 hours, 0 microtransactions. That one shouldn't exist. A samurai open world with a 50-hour campaign, a complete expansion set on Iki Island, and a free cooperative multiplayer mode called Legends that has its own raids, survival maps, and progression system. All of that in one package. Sucker Punch built one of the most visually striking open worlds on PlayStation. The wind guides you instead of a minibar. Standoffs let you kill enemies in a single strike if you time it right. The combat shifts from patient one-on-one duels to full-blown Mongol sieges, and every fighting stance is designed to counter a specific enemy type. The Iki Island expansion adds another 10 hours and a more personal story about Jin's past. Legends, which they added for free, is a full co-op experience with classes, gear, and endgame content that other studios would have charged separately for. It's still active, people are still playing it. This is the kind of game where you finish the campaign, realize you haven't touched Legends yet, and suddenly you've got another 30 hours ahead of you, and none of it feels like filler. The package as a whole is one of the best value propositions on PS5, period. $40. No open world, no crafting, no skill tree with 100 nodes, just you, your fists, and a kung fu revenge story where you age every time you die. I need to be honest about something. Most of the games on this list earn their price through volume. More hours, more content, more stuff to do. Sifu doesn't do that. It earns its price by being so mechanically perfect that you'll restart the same level 50 times because you know you can do it cleaner, faster, without aging a single year. Slowclap made a martial arts game where the combat actually feels like martial arts. You're reading attacks, choosing counters, managing spacing. The environment is a weapon. You'll slam someone into a table, grab a bottle, throw it at the next guy, dodge a sweep kick, and vault over a railing in one continuous flow. The hallway fight. If you've played it, you know. If you haven't, it's the best action sequence in any PS5 game, and I'll argue that against anyone. The aging mechanic is what ties it together. Die at 20 and it's a setback. Die at 60 and it's devastating. Clear the whole game without aging past 30? That's when you know you've actually mastered it. And that mastery loop, the reason you keep coming back, is worth more than most 80-hour games that waste your time with padding. If you're still here, good. These first 5 range from $25 to $70, and every single one delivered. The next batch goes even harder on the value argument. Every kid who grew up reading those books wanted this game. Every adult who grew up reading those books told themselves they didn't, then they bought it anyway. Hogwarts Legacy sold 12 million copies in 2 weeks. Not because the combat is groundbreaking, it's serviceable, fun, but not why you're here. You're here because Avalanche Software built the Hogwarts you imagined when you were 10 years old and made it explorable. Every corridor, every moving staircase, the room of requirement that you can customize into your personal workshop, the forbidden forest at night when you definitely shouldn't be there. The open world around Hogsmeade is bigger than most people expected. Hamlets, dungeons, caves, beast dens, and it's all connected to a story set in the 1890s, long before any character you know. That separation from the books is smart. No Harry, no Voldemort, just your character, your wand, and your choices. 60 hours if you explore everything. Spellcrafting that lets you chain combinations mid-fight. A morality system that doesn't lecture you for using the unforgivable curses. It just lets you, and deals with the consequences. Is it the deepest RPG on this list? No, but it's the one that delivers exactly what it promised. And sometimes that's worth more than innovation. And speaking of delivering on promises, number 10 is a game from 2020 that still hasn't been topped visually on PS5. 5 years later. Let that sink in. 200 hours of content. 0 microtransactions. No battle pass, no seasonal roadmap, no year 1 DLC plan. Just a finished RPG shipped on a disc that respects your intelligence enough to let you solve problems however you want. Larian Studios spent 6 years building this. 3 years in early access where they actually listened to feedback and rebuilt entire systems. When it launched in August 2023, it won Game of the Year at every single award show. Every one. And it deserved all of them. The freedom is what justifies the price. You can talk your way out of almost any fight. You can throw enemies off cliffs. You can polymorph a boss into a sheep. You can miss entire companions, entire storylines, entire regions and still have a complete experience. Then start over and find 30 hours of content you never knew existed. The companion writing is some of the best in RPG history. Karlach's story alone would carry a lesser game. 4-player co-op where every person can go in completely different directions. a Dark Urge playthrough that turns the entire game into a horror story. Origin characters that reframe the narrative from scratch. This isn't the game you play once, it's a game you play 3 or 4 times, and each run feels like a different game. If you care about getting your money's worth, genuinely, mathematically, nothing on PS5 comes close to this. The dollar per hour ratio is almost embarrassing for every other game on this list. People heard Korean action game with an attractive protagonist and wrote the whole thing off as fan service bait. The discourse was so loud that the actual game got lost underneath it. Shift Up made mobile gacha games. That's their background. Nobody expected them to ship a full-price console action game that could stand next to Platinum and From Software's best work. But the combat in Stellar Blade is no joke. The parry system has precision timing that rewards practice, the dodge mechanics create a rhythm to every fight, and the boss encounters escalate from challenging to genuinely demanding in ways that feel earned, not cheap. The post-apocalyptic world is more interesting than the trailer suggested. There's a twist in the back half of the story that reframes everything you've been doing, and the environmental storytelling in the ruin zones tells its own separate narrative if you're paying attention. 30 hours for the main story, closer to 45 if you explore. But real talk, is Stellar Blade the most underestimated game on PS5? Not underrated, the reviews were solid. Underestimated, as in people decided what this game was before they touched the controller, and most of them were wrong. A 6-hour game about being a cat in a cyberpunk city full of robots? $30, and somehow it justified every cent. Blue 12 Studio built something that shouldn't work on paper. You're a stray cat, you knock things off shelves, you meow at robots, you nap on cushions. These are actual gameplay mechanics. The cat doesn't talk, doesn't have powers, doesn't level up. You're just a cat navigating a forgotten underground city, and the environmental puzzle design makes that premise carry an entire game. The world does the heavy lifting. Every alley has a story. The robots have built a society mimicking humans they've never met, wearing hats, running bars, painting art, and it's simultaneously charming and heartbreaking. The mystery of what happened to humanity unfolds through details you notice, not cutscenes you watch. 6 hours, that's short. Some people will say that's not worth $30, but those 6 hours have zero filler, no padding, no collectathon to inflate the runtime. Every minute is intentional. And honestly, in a world where 60-hour games waste 40 hours of your time with busy work, a tight 6 hours that leaves you thinking about it for days is a better deal than most people realize. How is a launch title from 2020 still one of the best-looking games on PS5? 5 years, hundreds of games released since. Ray tracing, photogrammetry, Unreal Engine 5, all of it. And Bluepoint's Demon's Souls remake still makes people stop and stare. The Tower of Latria, the Shrine of Storms, the first time you see the Dragon God. Screenshots from this game still get mistaken for concept art. But looks aren't the value argument here. This is the game that started everything. Before Dark Souls, before Elden Ring, before every studio tried to make their own Souls-like. Demon's Souls is where the formula was born. The tension of carrying thousands of souls through a fog gate. The satisfaction of memorizing an enemy's moveset. The moment you finally beat a boss that killed you 20 times. Still here? Good, because here's the thing about this list so far. We've covered games from $25 to $70, 2020 to 2025, 6 hours to 200 hours. Every single one delivered more than the price tag promised. The next 5 go deeper. Some of them you've played, some of them you've never heard of, and at least one of them is gonna start an argument in the comments. March 2023. Respawn had just proven with Fallen Order that a single-player Star Wars game could sell without loot boxes, without multiplayer, without any of the nonsense EA had been pushing for years. The sequel had one job: be bigger, be better, don't mess it up. They didn't mess it up. Jedi Survivor takes everything from Fallen Order and expands it in every direction. 5 lightsaber stances instead of 2, a hub area on Koboh that grows as you progress, with NPCs who move in, relationships that develop, a garden you can customize. The planets are denser, the traversal is faster, and the Metroidvania structure rewards backtracking in ways the first game barely attempted. The combat is where the money is. Crossguard stance turns Cal into a greatsword fighter with massive damage and slow recovery. Dual wield is aggressive and flashy. Blaster stance, yeah, you get a lightsaber and a gun, is the most fun way to play, and it shouldn't work, but it absolutely does. The Rancor fight on Kobo, the Dagon Jarrah encounters, these are boss fights designed to test whether you actually understand the combat or just mashed your way through Fallen Order. 35 hours if you explore. The performance issues at launch hurt this game's reception, but those are fixed now. What's left is one of the best Star Wars experiences in any medium, and it earned its price tag the hard way. People called it a cash grab, a remaster nobody asked for. The original looked fine on PS5 already through backward compatibility. Why would anyone pay for this again? Because Guerrilla rebuilt it. Not upscaled, rebuilt. New character models that match Forbidden West quality, facial animations completely redone so conversations don't look like two mannequins staring at each other anymore, DualSense haptics that make every arrow release feel different depending on the bow, and the loading times, which were already fast through backwards compatibility, are now essentially non-existent. The game itself holds up better than people remember. The machine combat is still unique. Nothing else on PS5 gives you that feeling of stripping armor plates off a Thunderjaw piece by piece, targeting specific components to disable attacks, and improvising when your plan falls apart. The Frozen Wilds DLC, included in the remaster, adds another 15 hours and some of the hardest encounters in the game. Is it just me, or do people forget how good the original Horizon actually was? Breath of the Wild came out the same week and completely buried it. This remaster is the second chance it deserved. January 2023. Xbox's developer showcase. Tango Gameworks, the studio behind The Evil Within, shows a colorful rhythm action game where everything moves to the beat. No prior announcement, no marketing campaign. They shadow dropped it same day and said, "Here, play this." It was the best surprise of the year. Every attack, every dodge, every environmental interaction syncs to the soundtrack. You're not just mashing buttons, you're playing on beat for bonus damage. And once the rhythm clicks, the combat transforms from an action game into a performance. Bosses have their own musical themes that change the tempo mid-fight. There's a level set to a 9-inch Nails track that's one of the best designed stages in any action game in years. Then, Tango Gameworks got shut down. Microsoft closed the studio. The team that made this, a game that reviewed brilliantly, that players loved, that showed more creativity in 5 minutes than most AAA games show in 50 hours, got disbanded because it didn't sell enough units. It's on PS5 now, $30. If you play one game on this list to honor a studio that deserved better, make it this one. And speaking of games where the writing does something no other game even attempts, number 17 is gonna divide this comment section. Trust me. The most polarizing game on this list, and I'm putting it here anyway because no other RPG on PS5 makes you feel like you're actually inside a fantasy world the way this does. Capcom spent 12 years between Dragon's Dogma 1 and the sequel. 12 years of fans begging for a follow-up. When it finally arrived in March 2024, reviews were mixed, 75 on Metacritic, performance issues, microtransaction controversy on launch day. The open world doesn't hold your hand, no quest markers pointing you to the next objective, no minimap, you get lost, you fight something you're not ready for, you die in the wilderness at night because you didn't bring enough lantern oil. And that's the entire point. Dragon's Dogma 2 is an RPG that trusts you to figure things out. The pawn system gives you AI companions that learn from your playstyle and can be shared with other players online. The class system lets you switch vocations freely, and some of them, Mystic Spearhand, Trickster, Warfare, play like nothing else in the genre. The large enemy encounters are physics-driven chaos, where you're climbing onto a griffin mid-flight and hacking at its wings, while your pawns cast spells from below. It's not for everyone. The lack of fast travel, the stamina management, the obtuse quest design. These are features, not flaws, but they'll frustrate people who want a guided experience. If you bounced off the first 5 hours, you missed the game opening up into something genuinely special. And if you want an RPG that respects your intelligence enough to let you fail, nothing else on PS5 does it like this.
I'll be straight with you. If I'd made this list at launch, Forbidden West probably wouldn't be here. The base game was good, beautiful, technically impressive, well crafted, but it played it safe. Same formula as Zero Dawn with a bigger map and more machines. 7 out of 10 vibes. Then Burning Shores happened. The DLC set in the ruins of Los Angeles takes every criticism of the base game and addresses it. Tighter pacing, a companion in Seika who actually has chemistry with Aloy, a final boss fight against a machine so massive it takes up the entire screen, and an ending that sets up the third game in a way that makes the entire Forbidden West journey feel like it was building to something. The complete package, base game plus Burning Shores, is a 70-hour open world with underwater exploration, flying mounts, and machine combat that's still unmatched in scope. The PS5 version runs at a locked 60 FPS in performance mode with almost no visual compromise, and the rain effects, underwater lighting, and draw distance are still among the best on the console. Half of you probably played the base game and stopped. The other half wrote it off as more of the same. Both groups are wrong. Burning Shores elevated this from good to genuinely great, and at its current price, the complete edition drops to $30, sometimes $25 on sale. The value is ridiculous. The last 6 games on this list are the heaviest hitters. If you made it this far, you're the kind of person who actually finishes these videos. Let's close this out right.
2 full games, remastered for PS5. $50. If you've never played either one, this might be the single best value proposition on the entire console. Uncharted 4: A Thief's End is Naughty Dog at peak blockbuster. The Madagascar chase sequence, jeep, motorcycle, armored convoy, collapsing buildings is still one of the best action set pieces in gaming. The rope mechanics turn traversal from climb yellow ledges to something that actually requires spatial awareness, and the story wraps up Nathan Drake's arc in a way that earned its emotional beats without relying on death or tragedy. That's harder to pull off than most people appreciate. Lost Legacy is the one people skip, and they shouldn't. Chloe and Nadine in India hunting a mythical tusk, navigating the Western Ghats, it's tighter than Uncharted 4. 10 hours, no filler. The open-ish section in the middle lets you tackle objectives in any order, and the final act has a train sequence that rivals anything in the mainline series. Both games run at 60 FPS on PS5 with near instant loading. The DualSense adds haptic feedback to every gunfight and rope swing. 2 complete Naughty Dog campaigns for the price of 1 new game. If you somehow missed these, maybe you came from Xbox, maybe you skipped PS4 entirely, this is where you start. The best Ren RPG ever made. No combat, no action, no loot, just a broken detective waking up in a trashed hotel room with no memory, and you deciding what kind of person he's gonna be. Zad built a game entirely around conversation, internal monologue, and skill checks. Your stats aren't strength and dexterity, they're things like Inland Empire, which lets you talk to objects and sense the supernatural, or electrochemistry, which is literally your brain's addiction center trying to convince you to drink and do drugs. Every stat has a voice. They argue with each other. They interrupt conversations. Your own mind is an unreliable narrator, and the game is constantly asking you to decide which part of yourself to trust. The writing is on another level. Political ideologies aren't presented as good or bad. You can be a communist, a fascist, a centrist, an apocalypse prophet, and the game takes each one seriously while also making you confront the absurdity of your own convictions. There's a scene with a dead body hanging from a tree that you can spend 3 in-game days investigating, and the resolution depends entirely on which skills you've invested in. But real talk, is there any other game on PS5 where the gameplay is the writing? Not writing bolted onto gameplay. The writing itself is the mechanic. Every other RPG on this list has combat as its core loop. This one has language, and it costs $40. And speaking of games that redefine what 100 hours can feel like, the last game on this list might be the strongest closer I've ever had to put at the end of a video. 150 hours. Still not done. October 2019 in Japan, March 2020 everywhere else. A re-release of a 2017 game that was already considered one of the greatest RPGs of all time, and somehow the Royal version made it better in ways nobody expected. The extra semester, the third semester that Royal adds, takes a story that already had a satisfying ending and extends it into something deeper. A new villain whose motivation is genuinely sympathetic.
a new party member in Kasumi who earns her place alongside the original cast. 20 additional hours that don't feel bolted on, they feel like the ending Atlas always intended. 120 hours. That's the average first playthrough, not speedrunning, not skipping dialogue, actually playing the game the way it's meant to be experienced. You go to school during the day, build relationships with confidants after class, and infiltrate the cognitive palaces of corrupt adults at night. The turn-based combat rewards exploiting elemental weaknesses in a way that makes every battle feel like a puzzle. The soundtrack never lets up. Last Surprise still hits after the 100th ambush. This game costs less than most new releases and delivers 3 times the content. The confidant stories alone, Sojito's quiet redemption, Futaba's overcoming her trauma, Yusuke's obsessive pursuit of beauty, would carry a lesser game. Royal has dozens of them, and they're all worth finishing.
You bought a PS5. The box promised a new generation, faster loading, better graphics, the DualSense controller doing things you've never felt before. And then most launch window games felt like PS4 games running slightly faster. Rift Apart was the first game that actually delivered on the promise, pulling Ratchet through dimensional rifts with zero loading, not almost zero, literally zero, felt like the future. 1 second you're in a dense jungle, the next you're on a chrome cityscape, and the transition is seamless. The DualSense triggers resist differently depending on which weapon you're using. The topiary sprinkler freezes enemies into hedges. The black hole storm creates a miniature black hole. Every weapon feels like a toy designed specifically for this controller. Rivet, the alternate dimension Lombax, ends up being more interesting than Ratchet himself. Her story about learning to trust people after years of fighting alone gives the game an emotional through line that the series has never really had before. The pacing is relentless. There's no point in this game where it drags. No empty open world, no filler missions, just 12 to 15 hours of constant spectacle that uses every piece of the PS5 hardware. It's shorter than most games on this list, but every single minute is polished to a degree that most studios can't achieve in 40 hours. Sometimes value isn't about length, it's about density. What do you say about a game that won over 300 Game of the Year awards and still has people arguing about whether it's good? Naughty Dog made the most technically accomplished game on PlayStation. That part isn't debatable. The animations, the way characters shift weight during melee, the way Ellie braces against walls in tight spaces, the way enemies call each other by name and react when you kill their friends. Nothing else on PS5 matches this level of detail. Nothing. The story is where the argument lives. You know the choice Naughty Dog made in the opening hours. You either accepted it and let the game take you on a 25-hour examination of revenge and empathy, or you didn't and stopped playing. Both reactions are valid, but if you bounced off the premise, the remastered version might be worth a second look. The no-return roguelike mode is genuinely excellent. The lost levels show cut content that adds context, and the haptic feedback on the DualSense makes the stealth gameplay feel completely different. The original was already a masterpiece of craft. The remastered version adds enough new content to justify revisiting it. And if you never played it at all, the complete experience, base game plus all additions, is one of the most ambitious narrative games ever attempted. Agree with the story or not, the value of what's in this package is undeniable. When's the last time a game sold 25 million copies with zero tutorials, no minimap, no quest log, and a story you need a PhD to understand? From Software spent years building a reputation through games that punish you. Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, niche audience, dedicated but niche. Then they partnered with George R.R. Martin, built an open world, and suddenly the whole industry had to reckon with the fact that the hardest studio in gaming just made the most popular RPG of a generation. The Lands Between is an open world that trusts you completely. No markers telling you where to go, no level gates blocking your path. You can walk into Caelid at level 1 and get destroyed, or you can stumble into a hidden underground river city that most players never find. Every dungeon, every catacomb, every legacy dungeon is handcrafted with the kind of attention that makes copy-pasted open worlds feel embarrassing. Then Shadow of the Erdtree dropped, a $40 DLC that's bigger than most full games. The Land of Shadow is denser than anything in the base game. New weapon types, new spells, new boss fights that are among the hardest From Software has ever designed. Mesmer, Promise Consort Radahan, the Scatatree. The community spent weeks solving puzzles and finding hidden paths. A year later, people are still discovering things. Base game plus DLC, 150 hours minimum. Multiple builds that play like completely different games. Strength, dexterity, magic, faith, arcane, or some combination of all of them. The most rewarding combat in gaming, the most mysterious world design, and the most content you'll get for your money outside of Baldur's Gate 3. This is the one. If every other game on this list disappeared and you could only keep one, this is the one. 21 games. Every price point from $25 to $70. Every genre from 6-hour cat adventures to 150-hour RPGs. Not a single one left me feeling like I wasted my money. That's the whole point. In a world where publishers keep charging more and delivering less, these games prove the price tag right. Which one are you starting with? Drop it in the comments. More of these coming soon. Peace.